All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're documenting a really interesting market cycle analysis. This one focuses on the Dow Jones 30 Index. So, let's dive in. So what you're looking at here is the visual signature for a method called market DNA. Think of this explainer as a public log, just showing how this system gets applied to the market. We're simply going to narrate the events exactly as they unfolded, based on what we can see. Okay, let's get specific. We're zeroing in on one particular cycle in the Dow Jones 30. It all kicked off on February 23, 2026. Everything we're about to see is based on the structure that was set up on that very day. You know, every single cycle begins with what's called Phase 1. This is basically the setup. It's the blueprint for the entire cycle. This is where everything gets established. We're talking entry points, targets, and even the specific risk plan. Let's break down how it was all laid out. Okay, take a look at this. This is the initial chart, right from Phase 1. You can see the system's geometric structure laid right over the price action. Now, what you really want to pay attention to are those key price levels. You'll see them labeled M, P of C, and N. These are the absolute core of the cycle's plan.
So, first up, the system identified its primary entry point at level M. That works out to a price of 48,754.8. And this right here, this is what officially kicked off the cycle.
But the plan didn't stop there. It also defined a second optional entry. That's at the level labeled P of C, which is priced at 48,258.1. Now, it's really important to get this. This isn't some new phase. It's just a pre-planned part of the risk strategy that was all set back in Phase 1.
What's pretty fascinating is that right from the get-go, the system defines two potential paths that the cycle could follow. There's the normal sequence, which goes from Phase 1 to 2 to 3 and then 4. But there's also an alternative sequence, 1, then 3, then 2, and finally 4. It's all laid out right at the start.
All right, let's talk about risk management. This table breaks down all the parameters that were established back in Phase 1. The model works with a hypothetical capital of $100,000, and it sets a maximum allowed drawdown of 5%. You can see the time duration for the cycle is set at 33 days, and from those inputs, other crucial numbers like position and trade sizes are calculated.
Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size.
So we've got our entries and we've got our risk plan. What about the exits? Well, Phase 1 maps those out too. 3 of them, in fact. Target 1 is set at the mirror line. Target 2, which is considered a safe exit, is at apex N. And then there's Target 3, the full exit, right at the top of the trapezoid.
So when you crunch all those numbers from Phase 1, the system projects two potential return scenarios. Scenario 1 projects an annual return of about 10.84%. Scenario 2, on the other hand, which would use both of those entry points, projects a 21.45% return. These were the expectations all set in stone during Phase 1.
Okay, so that was the plan. Now let's fast forward and see how things actually played out. The market's movement triggered the next step in the cycle, which was Phase 3, the N-level event.
And there it is. On February 26th, the price reached 49,629. If you remember, that's the apex N level, our predefined target 2. According to the system's rules, hitting this specific target means Phase 3 of the cycle is now complete.
The source documentation gives us a really clear description of what happened. It says, before the price touches the left trapezoid boundary, it climbed to the N price level. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that the cycle actually followed that alternative path we talked about earlier. It jumped directly from Phase 1 all the way to Phase 3.
So, where does that leave us right now? What's the current status of this whole cycle? Let's do a quick recap of the key events so far.
So let's just run through the timeline one more time. On February 23rd, Phase 1 was initiated at that M level. The price never retraced, it never went down to the secondary P of C level. Instead, by February 26th, the price had climbed all the way up to apex N. And that's what completed Phase 3 of the cycle.
And that brings us right up to the present moment. The cycle went from Phase 1 to Phase 3. So the documentation leaves us hanging with a pretty important question. Will the next phase we see be Phase 2? For now, the observation of this cycle just continues.
Okay, before we wrap up, it is absolutely essential that we go over some important disclaimers about this documentation.
Please be aware, this is not financial advice. The system prohibits using leverage above 10. You should never invest essential personal funds.
This analysis is simply part of a public model documentation and verification process. And finally, risk management must always follow the system's instructions.
And that's where we'll leave this update on the DJ30 cycle documentation. If you want to follow its progress or get more information, you can always visit the source website.